Lakers made a signing over the weekend, landing Marcus Smart after he got a buyout from the Washington Wizards.
It's official, Lakers just sealed the deal for Marcus Smart. But here's the twist. It wasn't Rob Pelinka or LeBron who pulled the strings. It was Luka.
When you get a guy like Luka calling.
Just a few days ago, he had promised to be the guy to bring the championship to LA.
The guy that brought championships to the city, for sure.
Well, he just made the first step towards delivering on that promise by announcing Marcus Smart. I've got all the details on how Luka got this blockbuster trade done. Let's break it down. The unexpected phone call that changed everything. Luka Doncic, the Slovenian sensation who had already conquered Europe before his 20th birthday, was sitting somewhere across the Atlantic Ocean, contemplating the future of his new franchise. Just months earlier, in February 2025, he had been traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers in what many called one of the most shocking moves in NBA history. The three-team deal that brought him to Hollywood had sent shockwaves through the basketball world, pairing him with his childhood idol, LeBron James, and creating what many believed could be the foundation of the next Lakers dynasty. But Doncic wasn't content to simply wait for greatness to find him. No, this was a player who had led Real Madrid to a EuroLeague championship as a teenager, who had carried Slovenia to their first ever Eurobasket title, and who had dragged the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals through sheer force of will and basketball brilliance, averaging 28.6 points, 8.6 rebounds, and 8.2 assists per game over his NBA career. Doncic understood that individual excellence meant nothing without the right supporting cast, and so, with the same methodical precision that had made him one of the league's most devastating pick-and-roll operators, he began to architect his own supporting cast. The target of his recruitment efforts was Marcus Smart, the gritty defensive-minded guard who had spent 9 seasons terrorizing opposing offenses with the Boston Celtics. Smart, the 2022 NBA Defensive Player of the Year, was coming off a tumultuous period that had seen him traded from his beloved Celtics to the Memphis Grizzlies, only to be moved again to the Washington Wizards just months later. After playing only 54 games over the past 2 seasons due to injuries, Smart found himself at a crossroads in his career, his future uncertain as he contemplated a contract buyout from Washington.
One thing about this that I thought was interesting, I know this was reported elsewhere, I checked on it too, that Luka Doncic did some, because I heard like, oh, Luka recruited him. And I said, I want to know because sometimes you hear like, oh, he recruited him, and then you peel back the layers and he sent him a text.
The content of those conversations revealed Doncic's evolving leadership style and his growing understanding of what it takes to build a championship caliber team.
When you get a guy like Luka calling, referencing, checking on you, trying to see where you at to see, and that if you want to come and join something special that he's trying to cook up over here, and for him to say that, to see that he can really use my help.
But this wasn't going to be one of those casual text message recruitments that have become so common in the modern NBA era. This was something far more significant, something that would signal a fundamental shift in how Luka Doncic approached his role as the Lakers' new franchise cornerstone.
So I checked this out, and it turns out that Luka called him a couple of times because over in Europe right now, and regardless of whether Marcus Smart works out, regardless of what the context was, I think the key here is that Luka is acting in concert with the Lakers front office.
The revelation that Doncic had personally called Smart multiple times from Europe painted a picture of a player who was no longer content to let others shape his destiny. Smart's reaction to these conversations revealed just how effective Doncic's approach had been.
That meant a lot, played against Luka a lot. Been on a lot of opposing ends of, Luka magic, and to be able to come out and be on his side at this time means a lot.
The timing of these calls was particularly fascinating when viewed through the lens of Smart's own journey. The veteran guard had been through an emotional roller coaster over the previous 2 years, watching his beloved Boston Celtics win their first championship since 2008, just 1 season after trading him away. Smart had envisioned spending his entire career in Celtic green, but the harsh realities of NBA business had other plans. His stint in Memphis had been marred by injuries and disappointment, while his brief time in Washington had offered little in terms of meaningful basketball or championship aspirations. Enter Luka Doncic, calling from across the ocean with a vision of something greater. These weren't perfunctory recruiting calls designed to check a box or satisfy a front office mandate. These were genuine conversations between 2 competitors who understood what it took to win at the highest level. Doncic, who had been acting as an active participant in Lakers roster construction rather than his previous hands-off approach, was essentially extending a partnership invitation to Smart, asking him to become part of something special in Los Angeles.
Luka got the message from the Lakers and followed up on it, apparently several times.
The significance of these multiple follow-up calls cannot be overstated. In an era where NBA superstars often make recruitment pitches through Instagram DMs or casual text messages, Doncic was investing real time and genuine effort into convincing Smart to join the Lakers' cause. This represented a fundamental shift from his natural state during his early NBA years, when he had essentially told his front office that roster construction wasn't his job. The evolution was particularly striking when considering Doncic's European basketball background. Unlike American players who had grown up in the AAU culture of constant recruiting and relationship building, Doncic hadn't been immersed in that environment where players were constantly pitching each other on potential partnerships. His basketball development had followed a more traditional European path, where individual excellence was paramount and roster construction was left entirely to management and coaching staff.
Matter of fact, it was news that Luka was pushing for roster upgrades the year after. When was that? It was the year after Brunson's departure, right before they got Kyrie. The news wasn't that the roster needed to be upgraded, and Luka didn't let that be known. The news was that he was actually involving himself in front office discussions.
But here he was, thousands of miles away from the Staples Center, making multiple phone calls to a defensive specialist who might be the missing piece in the Lakers' championship puzzle. The commitment was unmistakable, the intent crystal clear. Luka Doncic was no longer just a passenger on the Lakers' championship express. He was becoming the conductor, orchestrating moves that would define the franchise's immediate and long-term future.
This is taking it a step further than he has in the past, where he is being a pitchman for the organization. I believe he also had some contact with DeAndre Ayton.
The revelation that Doncic had also been in contact with DeAndre Ayton, who would eventually sign with the Lakers, painted an even more comprehensive picture of his recruitment activities. This wasn't a one-off effort to land a specific player. This was a systematic campaign to assemble the right combination of talent, experience, and basketball intelligence around the Lakers' core. Doncic was essentially functioning as both the franchise player and an unofficial assistant general manager, using his basketball credibility and personal relationships to attract the caliber of players necessary for championship contention. The phone calls to Marcus Smart would prove to be just the beginning of a recruitment story that would ultimately reshape how we think about player empowerment in the modern NBA, setting the stage for one of the most surprising and impactful signings of the 2025 offseason, the perfect storm, why Marcus Smart was the missing piece. To understand why Luka Doncic's recruitment of Marcus Smart represented such a masterstroke of basketball intelligence, you have to appreciate the delicate ecosystem that championship teams require. It's not enough to simply accumulate talent. Successful franchises need the right combination of skill sets, personalities, and basketball IQs that complement each other in ways that transcend individual statistics. In Marcus Smart, Doncic had identified not just a talented player, but the exact type of defensive anchor and leadership presence that could transform the Lakers from playoff hopefuls into legitimate championship contenders. Marcus Smart's journey to this pivotal moment had been nothing if not eventful. The 30-year-old guard had spent nearly a decade establishing himself as one of the NBA's premier defensive specialists, earning the 2022 NBA Defensive Player of the Year award and becoming the first guard since Gary Payton to claim that honor. His resume was impressive by any measure: multiple all-defensive team selections, 3 NBA Hustle awards, and 9 consecutive playoff appearances with the Boston Celtics. But more than the accolades, Smart had built a reputation as the type of player who elevated everyone around him through sheer force of will and basketball intelligence. However, the path that led Smart to this moment had been fraught with disappointment and uncertainty. His time with the Memphis Grizzlies had been derailed by injuries, limiting him to just 20 games in his first season there, while his subsequent stint with the Washington Wizards had offered little in terms of meaningful basketball or championship aspirations. Having played a combined 54 games over the past 2 seasons, Smart found himself at a career crossroads, his once impeccable durability now a question mark, his future role in the league uncertain.
And this isn't like a Bradley Beal buyout where Bradley Beal, everybody could agree, is still a good player. I just don't genuinely know what player Marcus Smart is at this point.
The skepticism was understandable from a purely analytical perspective. Smart's injury history had been concerning, particularly the hand injuries that had plagued him throughout his career. His shooting had always been streaky, typically hovering in the low 30s from three-point range, and at 30 years old, there were legitimate questions about whether his defensive impact could remain at an elite level after multiple injury-shortened seasons.
This is very simple. If Marcus is healthy and motivated and is anywhere near the player he was during his time in Boston, the signing will be fine. like it'll be a good signing for the Lakers.
But Luka Doncic wasn't looking at Marcus Smart through the lens of statistical regression or injury concerns. He was evaluating Smart through the prism of championship basketball, understanding that the qualities that make Smart special, his defensive instincts, his leadership presence, his ability to make winning plays in crucial moments, don't diminish with age in the same way that athletic ability might. Doncic had spent enough time competing against Smart to understand his impact firsthand, recognizing that Smart's value extended far beyond what traditional metrics could capture. The Lakers' needs perfectly aligned with Smart's skill set in ways that went beyond simple roster construction. Los Angeles had been searching for answers to their most glaring weakness, perimeter defense. With LeBron James approaching his 40th birthday and Anthony Davis shouldering an enormous defensive burden in the front court, the Lakers desperately needed someone who could take on the challenging assignment of defending opposing teams' best perimeter scorers night after night.
If Marcus Smart reports to training camp in shape and ready to roll, which really hasn't been the case the last couple of years, then he answers one of the most glaring questions about the Lakers roster, and that's who's going to guard the other team's best perimeter scorer. Obviously, Marcus Smart, if he's right, is the answer to that.
The timing of Smart's availability created what can only be described as a perfect storm of opportunity. After agreeing to a contract buyout with the Washington Wizards on July 19, 2025, Smart found himself as arguably the most accomplished defensive player available on the free agent market. For a Lakers team that had the financial flexibility through their biannual exception, Smart represented the rare combination of proven championship experience and immediate availability.
I think Marcus Smart was dealing with professional heartbreak the last couple of years in Memphis. I don't believe he ever wanted to be there.
The psychological aspect of Smart's situation cannot be understated in understanding why Doncic's recruitment efforts were so effective. Smart had spent 9 years in Boston, establishing deep roots in the community and genuinely believing he would spend his entire career in Celtic green. His departure from Boston had been particularly painful, watching his former team win the 2024 NBA championship just one season after trading him away. The subsequent disappointments in Memphis and Washington had left him searching not just for a new team, but for a renewed sense of purpose and championship opportunity.
It is an opportunity for him to get back in a situation where there's going to be spotlight. He's going to be in a high pressure kind of situation, and maybe that's what he needs to get his career back on track, because it certainly went off track the last couple of years.
When Doncic reached out with his vision of championship contention in Los Angeles, he was offering Smart something that no other suitor could provide: the opportunity to be a crucial piece of a legitimate championship puzzle alongside two of the game's greatest players. The Lakers weren't just offering Smart a contract, they were offering him redemption, relevance, and the chance to add a championship ring to a resume that already included nearly every other conceivable basketball achievement. The financial structure of Smart's eventual deal with the Lakers, a 2-year, $11 million contract with a player option, represented remarkable value for a player of his caliber and experience. The Lakers used their biannual exception to complete the signing, demonstrating their commitment to maximizing every available resource in pursuit of championship contention.
He's got a player option. He can be he's kind of got if he's ever going to get paid again, he's got to have a good year.
This is a setup for him to get paid, going to the Lakers on a huge stage. Can he bounce back and have a really good year?
The contract structure was particularly brilliant from both perspectives. For Smart, it provided the security of a guaranteed second year while maintaining the flexibility to opt out if he had a bounce-back season that warranted a larger payday. For the Lakers, it represented a low-risk, high-reward investment in a player whose ceiling remained championship level if he could regain his health and form. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Smart signing was what it revealed about Doncic's growing maturity as a franchise leader. Rather than simply focusing on offensive firepower or statistical production, Doncic had identified a player whose primary value lay in the intangible aspects of winning basketball. Smart's ability to guard multiple positions, his knack for making crucial plays in pivotal moments, and his championship experience with international competition made him exactly the type of player that championship teams require. Smart's own words about the recruitment process revealed the impact that Doncic's personal approach had made. This wasn't a generic pitch about joining a successful franchise. This was a specific invitation to become an integral part of a championship vision that Doncic was actively constructing. The personal touch, the multiple multiple phone calls, the genuine investment in Smart's decision-making process. All of it pointed to a level of recruitment sophistication that belied Doncic's relative youth and inexperience in such matters. The stage was now set for one of the most intriguing experiments in modern NBA roster construction, pairing a transcendent offensive talent like Doncic with a defensive specialist like Smart, anchored by the championship experience and basketball IQ of LeBron James. The question that remained was whether this carefully orchestrated recruitment would translate into on-court success and championship contention. The ripple effect, what this means for the Lakers and the NBA. The successful recruitment of Marcus Smart by Luka Doncic represents far more than a simple roster addition. It signals a fundamental shift in how modern NBA superstars approach their roles as franchise cornerstones and the lengths to which they'll go to construct championship-caliber teams. The reverberations of this move extend beyond the Lakers' immediate championship aspirations, potentially reshaping the landscape of player empowerment and recruitment strategies across the entire league.
And I think that's actually the most significant part of all this, Wendy, because it does show that he's not only on the same page with the Lakers front office, but he is an active participant when, you know, his natural preference has been just like, hey, not my job. I don't want to have to bother myself with that.
The transformation of Luka Doncic from passive superstar to active roster architect has profound implications for how we understand player agency in the modern NBA. Throughout his early career, Doncic had explicitly maintained that roster construction wasn't his responsibility, preferring to focus entirely on his on-court performance while trusting management to surround him with appropriate talent. This hands-off approach was consistent with his European basketball upbringing, where the traditional hierarchy between players and management remained more rigid than in American basketball culture. However, his trade to the Lakers in February 2025 appears to have catalyzed a fundamental shift in his approach to leadership and franchise stewardship. The recruitment of Smart, combined with his reported contact with DeAndre Ayton, demonstrates a player who has fully embraced his role as the primary decision-maker in the Lakers' championship pursuit.
Number three, if he's recruiting this aggressively for the biannual exception and a slice of the mid-level, what's he going to do when they have max cap space? I would say that's a pretty, if he's willing to, put forth this kind of effort at the lower price
who's there going to be?
This evolution raises fascinating questions about Doncic's future recruitment efforts and their potential impact on the Lakers' long-term competitiveness. If he's willing to invest significant time and energy into recruiting players who can be signed with mid-level exceptions and biannual exceptions, the implications for when the Lakers have maximum salary cap space are staggering. The prospect of Doncic personally recruiting max-level superstars to join him in Los Angeles could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the Western Conference and potentially across the entire league. The immediate basketball implications of Smart's addition to the Lakers roster are equally compelling. Los Angeles had struggled with perimeter defense throughout the previous season, often relying too heavily on LeBron James and Anthony Davis to anchor both ends of the court. Smart's arrival provides the Lakers with a legitimate answer to opposing teams' best perimeter scorers, potentially allowing James to conserve energy for offensive responsibilities and playoff performances.
It first came, my agent, I'm working out and I get a call from my agent saying, hey, Luka's reached out. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, all right. And then another day, same thing, Luka reached out again. And now it's real, it's no longer what ifs, it's real.
Smart's own account of the recruitment process reveals the persistence and dedication that Doncic brought to this effort. The progression from initial skepticism, yeah, whatever, to genuine consideration, now it's real, illustrates how Doncic's personal investment in the recruitment process made a tangible difference in Smart's decision-making. This level of direct player-to-player recruitment, particularly from a franchise cornerstone to a role player, represents a sophisticated understanding of how championship teams are constructed in the modern NBA. The broader strategic implications for the Lakers' championship window cannot be overstated. With LeBron James approaching his 40th birthday, the franchise faces tremendous pressure to maximize their remaining opportunities with one of basketball's greatest players. Smart's defensive expertise and championship experience provide crucial elements that were missing from their previous roster constructions, potentially bridging the gap between playoff participant and championship contender.
Most important things for the Lakers are Luka related. One, does he get into that contract extension? Again, sometime before the season. It doesn't have to be in August. They can offer to him in August. I'm sure they will. He may not get into that business until later.
The recruitment of Smart also serves a crucial secondary purpose in the Lakers' long-term planning, demonstrating organizational commitment to Doncic's championship ambitions. With Doncic eligible for a contract extension, the Lakers needed to show that they were willing to make the necessary moves to build a championship-caliber roster around their new franchise cornerstone. The Smart signing, while relatively modest in financial terms, sends a powerful message about the organization's willingness to prioritize winning over cost-cutting measures.
If he signs an extension with the Lakers this offseason and commits to the Lakers, it's the only thing that matters, because then he's with the Lakers. They can go forward and build with him.
The domino effect of securing Doncic's long-term commitment extends far beyond the immediate basketball considerations. A committed Doncic becomes the foundation upon which the Lakers can build sustainable championship contention, attracting other high-level players who want to compete alongside one of the league's most dynamic talents. The Smart recruitment serves as a proof of concept for this approach, demonstrating that Doncic's personal involvement in roster construction can yield tangible results. However, the success of this experiment will ultimately be measured by on-court performance and championship results. Smart's injury history remains a legitimate concern, and his ability to remain healthy and effective throughout a full season and potential playoff run will determine whether Doncic's recruitment efforts translate into meaningful basketball success.
My question is more, does he still have the same ability defensively, and especially, can he stay on the court? Like, he played 61 games 3 years ago, and he's played a combined 54 the last 2. So if he can stay out there, yeah, he's got a chance to be an impact signing for them.
The broader NBA landscape must also contend with the precedent that Doncic's recruitment efforts have established. If successful, other superstars may begin to take more active roles in recruiting teammates, potentially accelerating the pace of roster construction and creating new dynamics in free agency and trade negotiations. The traditional power structure between players, agents, and front offices could shift dramatically if star players begin functioning as de facto general managers in their recruitment efforts.
It's the same. He's a competitor, and he just the same way. He has that competitive nature when he's talking, when he's intrigued, and that's it. He didn't really have to say much.
Smart's description of Doncic as a recruiter, emphasizing his competitive nature and natural leadership qualities, provides insight into why this particular recruitment effort was so successful. Rather than relying on elaborate pitches or financial incentives, Doncic apparently let his basketball credibility and competitive fire speak for themselves. This approach suggests a level of authenticity and basketball intelligence that transcends traditional recruitment tactics. The ultimate success of this Lakers experiment will depend on multiple factors: Smart's health and defensive impact, Doncic's continued development as a leader and franchise cornerstone, and the team's ability to integrate these new pieces into a cohesive championship caliber unit. But regardless of the on-court results, Doncic's recruitment of Smart has already achieved something significant. It has demonstrated a new model for how modern superstars can take ownership of their championship aspirations through direct, personal involvement in roster construction. As the 2025-26 NBA season approaches, all eyes will be on Los Angeles to see whether this bold experiment in player-driven recruitment can translate into the ultimate prize, an NBA championship. The stakes couldn't be higher, the expectations couldn't be greater, and the potential implications for the future of player empowerment in professional basketball couldn't be more profound. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.